of the 11th day of the 11th month, formerly known as Armistice Day, the end of World War I. My name is Kevin Hunt, and there are 14 days till Thanksgiving and then 29 days till Christmas. The days seem to be getting shorter. Thank you for joining us on this changing day and last-minute circumstances, and I think we made the right choice moving inside. I've been doing this. If you count Memorial Day and Veterans Day, this will be my 15th or 16th time doing it. We've never, ever had to go inside. So it's nice to see that it seems so far to be working out pretty well. And I would like to introduce the Mayor of I would like to introduce Major Todd Hughes of the Newburyport Salvation Army, who will deliver the invocation.
Thank you. I just want to say what a great privilege this is to be a part of the ceremony today to honor the brave men and women who serve this country. Please join me in a word of prayer. Gracious Father in heaven, we thank you for this day. And we thank you, Father, for this moment that we can celebrate, pay tribute to, and honor the brave men and women who served in this nation's armed forces, as well as the men and women who currently serve in this nation's armed forces. Lord, we think of the freedoms and the rights we enjoy in this country, things that we take for granted, things that would not be possible if it were not for the service of our veterans and our armed forces. So, Father, we pray your blessings upon them this day. And Lord, may we remember that every day is a day to honor and pay tribute to the men and women who serve this country with bravery, heroism, loyalty, and sacrifice. The sacrifices that they've made will not be forgotten. And the service they have made to this country, Lord, will always be remembered. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
I'm going to ask you to rise again because we're going to do the national anthem. All those in the military that are wearing hats and salute at the beginning of the first note of the music. Standing, and I would request that we have a couple of Boy Scouts come up onto the stage and join me, 2 or 3, whatever, and we're going to have them lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the republic for which it stands, one nation,
belts from, I believe, Troop 21. Is that Troop 21?
251.
351, I'm sorry. All I had to do is read the numbers. Please be seated. We're now ready. I now would like to introduce the Mayor of Newburyport, Mayor Donna Holliday.
Thanks to all of you for being here today. It's unfortunate that the weather didn't cooperate, and I think this is the first time in probably a decade that we've had to move our ceremony inside, but really appreciate all of you being here. I would also like to take a minute and just offer a round of applause for Kevin Hutton, who does an amazing job on Veterans Day. And not only does he do a great job organizing these ceremonies for us, but his care and outreach to all the veterans in the greater Newburyport area is really significant. And we really appreciate having such a strong veteran service officer in our community. So thank you, Kevin. I'd also like to take a minute and recognize the elected officials who are on the stage with us today. On my left is our state rep, Jim Kalkhorst. And on my right is our city council president, Tom O'Brien. And Robert Cronin, sorry Bob, Robert Cronin, who is our Ward 2 councilor. Barry Khalid Connell, who is our councilor at large. Larry Junta. Larry! All right. And Charlie Tonter, who is our Ward 4 councilor. And to my left, we have Ed Cameron, who is a city councilor at large. And Jared Alderman, who is Ward 2 councilor. And of course, we can't forget probably one of our longest serving school committee members and very, very active leader in Boy Scouts, Bruce Minnan. But outside of our distinguished guests, most importantly are the veterans who are here with us today that we honor and recognize. Men who have served our country. We do not have any veterans living with us today from World War I, but we still have in the area nearly 200 veterans from World War II and continue to honor their service and have a whole series of events that are organized by our Regional Veteran Services Office. We also have veterans who are here with us from Vietnam, the Korean War, the Gulf War, post 9/11. And I would like to ask that all veterans who are here, if you could, would you please stand and be recognized? It has become a tradition during our Veterans Day and Memorial Day ceremony to recognize those who have passed during that 6-month period of time. And what we do is honor each of their branches of the armed service, and not only the individual, but we ring these beautiful brass bells that were donated to our city by Richard Banks, a very generous donation, and really I think adds to our reading of the names and recognizing their branch of the armed services. William Pelletier, Army. A special remembrance for William, a past city councilor, former Newburyport Veterans Graves Registration Officer, World War II veteran who crossed from Africa into Europe via Sicily, and one of the few in the world who worked with Navajo Indian talkers. His son Dick is one of the motorcycle riders who leads our parades. Thank you, Dick. Harold Teague, Army. Harold was a past commander of the Disabled American Veterans, born and raised in Newburyport, and also a past commander of the Sons of Union Veterans and the Newburyport Oddfellows. He was an expert bowler at Leo's Super Bowl, loved crossword puzzles and country music. Wilfred Bill Mace Jr., Navy. Bill was born in Newburyport and grew up in our city. He attended Newburyport High School and remained a Clippers fan his entire life. He enjoyed spending time with his family and watching the waves and the boats on the ocean. He also loved a good meal and sharing that with his friends. Oliver Ollie Zakar, Air Force. During the Korean War, Ollie enlisted in the Air Force and proudly served his country for the duration of the war. He is survived by his longtime friend, Rita Royer of Newburyport. George M. Cohen, Air Force. George was a graduate of Newburyport High School, class of 1971. He proudly served his country as sergeant, law enforcement specialist for the Air Force during the Vietnam era. He was employed as a decontamination specialist at many nuclear power plants for many years. Harry Kapoulis, Army. Harry was a lifelong resident of Newburyport. He graduated from Newburyport High School and was awarded the Zabriskie Trophy for Athlete of the Year for being a star player in all 3 sports. He served as a staff sergeant during the Korean War and was a member of the Massachusetts Carpenters Union his entire life. Paul Healy, Navy. Paul was one of the original Back Bay boys who was memorialized at the flagpole behind CBS across from the Greenleaf Street. He was a survivor of the 1945 bombing of the USS Montpelier and served in South Pacific during World War II. He was a charter member of the Elks, as well as a life member of both the Disabled American Vets and the Veterans of Foreign Wars. Paul Henry Dugan, Sr., National Guard. Paul served with the Massachusetts National Guard for many years and served as a call firefighter with the Newburyport Fire Department, where he achieved the rank of lieutenant. He and his wife Nora traveled the world extensively, and Nora is presently a member of the Newburyport Police Department. At every Veterans Day and Memorial Day, she is the policewoman driving the police car that escorts this parade through town. And if we had a parade, she would be out there leading us today. Thank you, Nora. George Monroe, Air Force. George is a longtime Newburyport resident who entered the Air Force just at the end of the Korean War. He loved the ocean, fishing, golfing, and absolutely anything to do with cars. He enjoyed NASCAR races and worked in the pits at local racetracks. Donald Mitchell Miller, Coast Guard. Don served with the Coast Guard Reserve during the last 2 years of World War II. He owned and operated his own construction company for many years, and later worked as a construction supervisor for large construction companies. He was an active member of the Masons and served for years in positions of high honor within that organization. This concludes our list of departed veterans this year. If we could please have a moment of silence to honor those who have passed. Thank you. Kevin?
Thank you, Mayor. City Hall, we didn't know we were going to be in here until yesterday morning. This building is celebrating this year its 170 years. It was built in 1845. It has always been the city's hall. And in the summer, it can get pretty hot in this room. Air conditioners today in various offices take off a lot of that strain. But in its early days, you could imagine a hot summer day in here, and there was no television or radio, no place to go, so everyone came to City Hall and packed in here. If you look up at the ceiling, you're going to see 3 large circles, bronze-colored circles. That was the air conditioning. And how it worked, there were fans up there. Those fans pulled the air up into big wooden tunnels. The air was pulled out of the building. Now, sometimes if you've ever attended a meeting in here, You know you can't hear anything. It's difficult. I can't imagine what it would have been like to hear anything in there without microphones and those fans blowing. I've also been told by a noted authority in our city, Ralph Ayers, who's sitting right here, World War II veteran, that we had donkey basketball played right here. They came up those stairs. Is that correct, Ralph? The donkeys? I assume the players were not on the donkeys when they came up the stairs, using those wonderful leather basketballs. There were a couple of other things that were up here too. Do you remember what they were? Other things that we did here? Yeah, you were out.
Well, I was kind of proud of my father and grandfather for what they bought right here in City Hall. And some of the great fighters of those days came as a result of some times when they would bring in a ship somewhere, and we would all, anybody could never take them on.
That's
They were big box for the most.
big box.
One in particular, a wrestler, some guy in the might remember, Tommy Kirk, one of the big wrestlers, being general, a former police officer, great sport.
Thank you. Thank you. Ralph is a store of knowledge on everything that happened in this city. I don't know how many of you heard all of what he was saying. It's hard to hear, but we had boxing in here, we had wrestling in here, and his father and grandfather promoted those events. Is that correct? That's nice. Outside, across from City Hall, is a flagpole that was donated by the Gaydon Morrill Foundation. Gaydon Morrill was a mayor of Newburyport during the Depression. And that was a difficult time for the city. There was questions whether the city would actually go bankrupt. And Gaydon Morrill was a wealthy man with extreme good business talent. He loaned this city money so that it could get through. He was also the gentleman who built that beautiful high school that we have out on High Street. And that flagpole now has an additional flag on it that has 2 gold stars. It's been on there for about a year, and we just put another 2 gold star flag up on the yard arm of the new flagpole at Bartlett Mound. Those stars represent specifically Jordan Shea and Derek Hines, 2 young men from this area who were killed in action. But it also represents all of the members of our armed forces who passed away while they were in service. Within a few months, with the blessing of the mayor and the city council, we will start a project that enables someone to remember a veteran by buying a brick that would be inscribed with the veteran's name. Those bricks will be out in the Veterans Square. That's the area directly across the street from City Hall. The brick would be placed in the square, and any profit made from the sale of the brick would be used to help revitalize the military monuments in this city. There are a number of military monuments in this city. Go up to the library, Newburyport Library Archives, and you will be able to get a listing of all of them. You'd be surprised. There's over 50 of them. Immediately in front of the building, there's an American flag that was flown at Fire Base Farah in Afghanistan. It was presented to the city by Sergeant First Class David Stanwood, a resident of the city and a retired member of our United States Army. His brother Robert Stanwood, sitting right over here, is my associate in the Veterans Office, and he too presented the city with a flag from a fire base in Iraq. I don't remember the name of the fire base. Do you remember the name? Camp Fernandez. Both of those flags are going to be encased, and we will label who gave them and where they came from. And they're going to be hung on the wall of the new Veterans Office over in our new Senior Community Center, which is an absolutely beautiful building. If you have not yet visited the new Senior Community Center, I strongly take a look at what your tax dollar could do. It is really, really something to behold. And let me just move on here. I've got to make a few quick adjustments here. The contractor of that building by the name is a local fellow. His name is Ralph Castagna. He also built the Salisbury Library up there at where the five roads come together. It's just an absolutely beautiful job on that. Before I say anything more, I would like to thank the Newburyport High School Marching Band and their director, Steve Cohen, who is in his 28th year with the Massachusetts National Guard, for the magnificent music and for making us feel so important. A strong thank you to the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts, all the Scouts, the Daisy, the Pueblos, the Cub Scouts, all of these fine organizations. They bring a sense of discipline to our younger people. They make young people realize that there is a requirement to do something you don't want to do sometimes. And I think if everyone had a chance to learn that, we'd all be better off in this world today. We recently announced that one of the troops has 5 Eagle Scouts. I'd like to read their names if I could. I don't know if any of them are in attendance today. Are any of the Eagle Scouts here? Okay. They're probably out doing some activity and earning another merit badge. If I can read these names. We have Ian Sewell, Daniel McCarthy Jr., Noah Menon, Liam Woodbury, and August Umholtz were all 5 promoted to Eagle Scout. Ladies and gentlemen, to have one Eagle Scout in a city is amazing. To have 5 of them at one time is really a tribute to their efforts and also the efforts of that scoutmaster, that troop master. I want to say a strong thank you, I always do, to Rich Banks, whose support throughout the year makes our city beautiful. He's the guy behind the scenes who makes it happen, and by no small coincidence, today, he was the one who donated the flag that we're looking at behind us, the beautiful flag. He also is the fellow who donates the flag when you see the 2 fire trucks. They have a huge flag between them. I want to say a special thank you to the Newburyport Police Honor Guard. They come, they join us at every parade. And we're not going to fire the rifles today, but at Memorial Day and Veterans Day, we do a rifle salute. Memorial Day, we do one at the river, as well as one down at the Veterans Cemetery. And I would like to thank the whole police and fire departments who provide the help on a day like this. And they make us feel safe at night. They're the guys who are awake when we're sound asleep. It's just nice to know they're out there. A special thank you. We couldn't have them riding their motorcycles today, but Patriots for American Veterans, Pablo, Frank Peluso in the audience, and also Dick Pelletier, and fellows who join them. They escort us. They bring us around beautiful bicycles, motorcycles, I shouldn't say bicycles. And a couple of quick announcements. All Newburyport veterans should have received an invitation to Michael's Harbor side. Michael's puts on a free meal today, and every year they feed almost 900 people, free. This is a marvelous thing that they do. You have to be a Newburyport veteran, you have to be a resident of the city. If you do not get an invitation and you are a resident and a veteran, please let my office know. And on November 25th at 6 o'clock, you may have noticed a poster just as you were coming in here. That's Thanksgiving Eve. We will be gathering at the newly rebuilt Veterans World War Memorial Stadium behind the high school for a rededication. And we're also going to be honoring Jim Stalin that evening. He's a longtime Newburyport football coach. Most of you know who he is, and a mentor to many young men who grew up in Newburyport. So please join us on that evening. That's going to be a nice ceremony. I think you'll all enjoy it. There will be some refreshments available at that time. I'd like to ask the band again to play some music for us. This is going to be what they call the Armed Forces medley. So when you hear your particular armed force, and if you are a veteran or the surviving spouse of a veteran or a member of the immediate family, or you just feel like standing up, please join in. now, this year, 2015, we celebrate the 70th anniversary of the end of World War II. World War II was fought on two fronts. It wasn't just a war, it was a war where we were fighting in Europe, we were fighting in Japan. The Germans thought we would lose because we were fighting the Japanese thought we would lose because we were fighting the Germans. And we won in both cases. Sadly, we lost a lot of people. As hard and difficult as that war was on the people fighting it, it also took a toll on the people back here at Newburyport. So I thought it might be enjoyable to take a little walk back 70 years and take a look at around 74 years ago what Newburyport might have started to look like toward the beginning of World War II. Newburyport wasn't much different than any other part of the country at that time. Unlike today's wars, which are sadly easily forgotten and not remembered, World War II really hit to the brain of everybody. As the war dragged on, restrictions on various items became stricter, and it was harder to get the things that you needed. And a new word spread through the community, and that word was rationing. You can't see it very well, but just before the ceremony, Frank Peluso, one of our motorcycle riders, gave me this. This is a ration book. In order to buy anything, and I'll mention a little bit more about this in a moment, in order to buy anything, you had to have this ration book. Almost all the world's rubber came from the Southeast Asia. And at that time, Japanese controlled most of Southeast Asia. So throughout Newburyport, we were collecting things that were made out of rubber, turning them in for recycling. Old tires, gloves, raincoats. How many remember a rubber raincoat? Garden hoses, all for the recycling effort. An interesting thing too, when they turned in the tires, back in the 1940s, the tires didn't look anything like they do today, I assure you. There were two parts to a tire back then. You had the part that looks like the tire today, and then you had the other part that was made of rubber on the inside called the tube. Pretty much like a bicycle tire. And people took newspaper and they put that between the tire and the tube. So that if the tire wore down and got a hole in it, it wore down the newspaper before it blew the tube out. A lot different than it is today. The early recycling effort in the war, 1941, was all volunteer. We asked everybody to turn in all of their goods, and people did. But in 1942, the rationing was enforced, and people started to place stickers in their car windows to denote how much gasoline they could get. And again, they had to have a ration book, a coupon. If you had an A sticker in your window, you were just like most of us here in the audience, and that meant that week, you could get 3 to 5 gallons of gasoline. And the miles per gallon would take you about 50 miles that week. That's what you were limited to. If you had other positions, if you were a medical doctor or you were a minister, you might get a C or even a D. And certainly our emergency first responders and everybody had the Ds. Interesting too, the reason we saved gasoline wasn't so much to have gasoline for our military, it was to stop people from driving so that we wouldn't use as much rubber. Later in 1942, they put restrictions on kerosene and coal. People in Newburyport heard a word that we're all used to today, but back then this was a brand new word. They were told to winterize their homes. No one knew what that meant. When you built a house in 1920 or 1930, you did not put insulation in that house. Today, that's standard. But there was no insulation back then. And some of you may remember when insulation started to come in, it would arrive in a big truck with a big blower, and a hole would be placed into the side of the building, and a hose would blow the insulation into the building, and then 18 inches away, another hole, and another hole, and another hole. And if you look at some of the old buildings in Newburyport, you can still see those pot marks where insulation was blown into the old buildings. To build a tank, required 18 tons of metal. A ship required 900 tons of metal. So metal became scarce, and everyone was asked to recycle. On the ends of each of the rows here, I placed photographs, and I'm going to ask you to share them. If you look at the photograph, you will see an example of a large truck. It's filled with scrap metal. And the gentleman on the right-hand side of the photograph is Mayor John Keller, thanking some Coast Guard people or some Navy people or both for their efforts in collecting all this scrap metal. We didn't have enough toner to make all of it. Sugar was the first food to be rationed. Again, you needed the ration book. You couldn't buy sugar, and that sugar shortage didn't end when the war ended. You couldn't get sugar until 1947. That's 2 years after the war. It was still very difficult to get sugar in this country. Meat and other foodstuffs quickly followed, and in 1943, many families in Newburyport did not have a Thanksgiving turkey, and they probably didn't have a Christmas ham, because if you did not need it, you didn't buy it. That was the slogan. You probably couldn't have bought it anyway, because there are not a lot of stamps in the books. If you couldn't buy it, you could always grow it. We were not, at that time, removed from being an agricultural society. So in 1941 through 1945, people went out to their gardens and community property, public property, and planted what were called victory gardens. And tomatoes and potatoes and squash and everything was growing in these beautiful gardens. And not only did the government tell you how to grow it, they also told you how to save it. And special instructions were given out to anyone who wanted to preserve the food or can it, as it was called. Now I'm going to take you to something that a lot of people don't realize. If you're cooking something today, you put the frying pan on the stove, you put some butter in it, you put some oil in it, you cook your meal. In 1941 through 1945, it was a lot different. There was not a lot of butter or oil, for that matter, available. There was a product called Crisco. Crisco came in a white can, and it looked sort of like axle grease. And many people felt it tasted like axle grease. But in any case, you put the Crisco in the pan, did the same thing as the butter, and after you cooked whatever you were cooking, you took the grease and you poured it into a coffee can. And the coffee can sat on the stove, or in some cases, the refrigerator or the icebox. That can of grease grew. You'd use it again. You'd refill it until the can was finally full of grease. And then you took it to the butcher. And the butcher turned it in for explosives. And you're reading it. All wars produce lasting injury, shell shock, battle fatigue, the numbness that we know from warriors who don't speak, they don't tell stories. It's a common condition, but one can only wonder that some of the civilian population of Newburyport perhaps went through some similar trauma in what they had to experience in the cold and the deprivation of that time. Times have changed, thank you. Some of you are old enough to remember the rationing. Most of you are not. Let's pray that none of these children here ever have to see anything like that again. Also, I want to mention, if you're a World War II veteran, or if you know of a World War II veteran, we honor them every month at the Hungry Traveler Restaurant in Salisbury. We do it at the third Tuesday of the month. There's another one coming up this coming Tuesday at 11:30. So if you do not already attend that, please come and join us. It's a World War II veteran and a guest. It's all done for free. And if you want to help that charity out, just contact my office. So to give you an idea of why people celebrated the end of World War II, it was the home front who sacrificed and not just the people. I'd like to thank all the veterans that are here today. I want to thank them for their service. I share the pride you feel in being able to count yourselves among the 1%, the greatest military in the world. We have a strong litany of wars in this country, starting with when we revolted against Britain, and we created the Revolutionary War, and we went on to have multiple wars since then. Not one of those wars, not one of those wars was started by a veteran. Each one of them, though, was finished by veterans. That's why we thank veterans for their service, because veterans don't start the wars, they end them. Now, normally in better weather, we would take a walk from here, and we go down Water Street, up State Street, down past the CVS, and down to the Veterans Cemetery. Make believe you're there. We're now in the Veterans Cemetery. It's at Old Hill. Old Hill Cemetery is the one that's across the street from CVS, and it's the one that has the big high hill. Now, across the street from Old Hill Cemetery is another cemetery. Now it's called Highland Cemetery, but it used to be called New Hill Cemetery. Well, back to Old Hill, and that's where we're standing right now. There are 50 Revolutionary War veterans buried in that cemetery. Very few people realize that. The city designated a special portion of that Old Hill Cemetery for the veterans' graves. That special section is when you come down the road by CVS, you come down to the bottom of the hill, at Route 1, if you look to your right, you'll see all the flags are nicely arranged in the row. That's the Veterans Cemetery. Right now we have 154 men and women veterans who are buried there. The only condition to be buried there is you are, in a word, a veteran of the city of Newburyport. The first veteran buried there, by the way, was Joe Rochette. Joe Rochette was also the first Yankee homecoming chairman. Am I correct on that, Frank? Ralph? Or you the first? You were the first.
And a great friend.
Okay. And he was also, Joe Rochette was also our first town crier. And his name is on a plaque down at the Waterfront Park. I'm mentioning Joe because one of the things that he was famous for saying for is, no one will remember me. Well, Joe, you are remembered. In the last 40 years at this wonderful cemetery, Glenn Woodworth and a team of volunteers have rehabilitated over, I'm going to say this number, I want you to hear it, 1,500 grave sites. They rehabilitate the grave site by taking the headstone that probably was leaning over like that and tilted. They take it and they put it back up straight. 1,500 of them at Old Hill, Oak Hill, Highland Cemetery, all volunteer, all on their own efforts. Really just a marvelous job. Lee Woodward really should get a round of applause. I'm going to attempt to read a poem that was written nearly 100 years ago. It certainly fits the mood of today. It was written during the war to end all wars, World War I. It was inspired by the red poppies growing in a battlefield where so many had recently died, and the red poppies represented the blood. It's called In Flanders Field. It was written by Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae. In Flanders Fields, the poppies blow between the crosses row on row that mark our place. And in the sky, the larks, still bravely singing, fly scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw a sunset glow. We loved and we were loved, and now we lie in Flanders Field. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from falling hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold on high if we break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though the poppies will grow in Flanders field. That will conclude my talking portion of this. I'm going to ask that Reverend Hughes again give us a benediction. After that, the band will play a couple of really nice selections, and that will be followed by taps. And that will mark the end of the ceremony for today.
Before we conclude our ceremony, I'd like to ask our state rep, Jim Calcourse, to say a few words.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Kevin Hunt, our City Council, and for all of you in the audience today who are veterans who have served us so honorably in the wars before us. It's just a great privilege to be here as your state representative. 97 years after the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, when then President Woodrow Wilson declared this, well, it was 96 years, and 97 years the year before that, in 1918 is when we entered into armistice with Germany. And then the following year, 96 years ago today, is when it was declared Armistice Day. And 61 years after, then President Eisenhower, in 1954, on June 1st, in Congress, declared today to be Veterans Day. It's really a privilege to be here where so many have once come, as Mr. Ayers has indicated, and so many different activities have taken place in this hall. In a city where folks like First Lieutenant Derek Hines grew up and served this country and passed away, and given me the privilege to be here serving you publicly today, as well as Andrew Nicole and Jordan Shea, and folks like who I spoke with earlier this afternoon, or actually earlier this morning today, who served this country. Zach Longley, 1963 graduate of Newburyport High School, 1968 to 1972 in the United States Navy. It's really an honor, and I thank him and I thank all of you for the ability to be here. Thank you very much, and have a great day.
Please rise for the benediction.
The benediction I'd like to share with you today is taken from the book of Numbers, chapter 6, verses 24 through 26. The Lord bless thee and keep thee. The Lord make his face shine upon thee, and be gracious unto thee. The Lord lift up his countenance upon thee, and give thee peace. Amen.
Thank you. That concludes our ceremony today. Please enjoy your day off. Let me mention one more quick thing. I forgot to mention the Custom House is offering a free tour to any veteran and the veteran family. That's now until we get close to the Custom House Museum. That's also going to be close to it. Thank you.